Hey guys, welcome to the shop. Now, got a lot to share with you this week. We're going to get started on a project that I've actually wanted to work on for quite some time. I got some viewer mail, I got some clips from work, I got some clips from the wife and kids in town. So I got a lot to share with you. So let's go in the shop and get started. Alright, so I've decided to start on a belt sander. Now, you got to start somewhere, so I'm going to start at the stand. You know, this is going to take a while, so we're not going to do these back-to-back videos of a belt sander. You know, they'll be here and there, and in the end we'll put them in a playlist. That way they're easy to watch. But I want to start on the stand, so I pulled out a bunch of junk out of my junk pile that I've actually been saving for this, and I hope it works the way I planned. So I'm going to bring you in, I'm going to show you this stuff, and tell you my plan, and we'll get started. So before we get started on this new stand, I want to show you the stand that I'm using for this sander here. And it's a basic stand that was given to me. It's a 15-inch car rim, 2-inch by 2-inch square tubing, and then to mount the actual sander to the stand, it's just a 1/4-inch plate. I added a removable swiveling water cup that I've showed several times, doubles as a extra belt hanger. Now, I worked on this for about a week. I've done a really good job on it. If you ask me, it runs extremely smooth for as fast as it runs. I think it's, what I say, 1350 RPM. And I'll show you a little demonstration here in just a second. Now, I did not add a couple features on this one that I want to add on the new one. I want to add a tilting table here. This one's just not fixed 90 degrees to the belt. And I also want to add a quick release for my belt tensioning system. That way I don't have to keep up with any tools. Right now I have to loosen these two 9/16 bolts in order to take the belt off. I also want to extend the tracking knob out here to where you don't have to reach between a running belt in order to, you know, track the belt. Let me show you how smooth this thing runs. It's really unbelievable. It runs so smooth I can stand a quarter up on this and it won't fall over while it's running. Get it balanced good. There you go. See? Alright, so this stand's going to be pretty unique. At least I think it will be. And I'm going to use several pieces that I've gathered from my scrap pile. I've got a hub from the drum of a washing machine. That's going to be the base. But it doesn't set flat, so I'm going to have to make some feet that bolt onto the ends, and that's just a big piece of stainless steel pipe. It's just a large radius that will bolt to this. This is going to be our top plate, and it's really rough right now, so we'll have to clean it up on the shaper. And this is really the centerpiece of the stand, and it is a solid stainless steel rotor out of a progressive cavity pump. Now, I think this should look pretty neat once we're done. It's going to have a, I guess you could call it a bezel or a cover that goes over the center to cover the transition here. And I think it's going to be pretty trick when it's done. So let's get started. All right, here's a little closer look at this, what's going to be my foot for the grinder stand. And it's pretty crusty right now. It's cast aluminum. And it has some bolt holes in the ends that are, I think they're 8mm by 1.5. I don't have, you know, all the hardware I need, so I'll have to order some, but that's no big deal. Have to polish this guy up, and then I'll clear coat it. I think that'll look pretty decent when I'm done. Here's what I'm going to use for the feet. And these are, hopefully you can see that, almost exactly the same radius. So I got lucky when I found this piece. So that'll, because this won't sit stable as it is, I have to put some feet on it. So we'll go over to saw, we'll cut this, we'll drill our holes, we'll mount what little we can to the ends here. We'll go to the shaper and we'll clean up our top plate because it's a disaster. the 3 feet are rough sawn, and you know, all that's left is to mount those. I'll probably take a angle grinder and a flap wheel and clean these up just to give them a smooth appearance. Maybe knock off some of these corners and stuff. Probably come in with a wire wheel and clean this up. It's got some corrosion and stuff on it, but I think that it'll look pretty good when we're finished. I'll probably use some aluminum wheel polish and you know, maybe clear coat it just to give it a good look, but that'll be in the future. Let's go over to the shaper. Let's worry about the top plate and get it squared away. Now here's the plate we're going to use to mount our grinder to. This is going to be welded to the vertical shaft of the stand. And it really doesn't have to be that accurate, but I want to true it up. This is anything but true. It's wedge shaped, it's thinner on one end than it is on the other. It's covered in rough meal scale, and it's rough sawn. It has 2 edges that are somewhat parallel to each other, but they're covered in sharp meal scale, and I don't want to imprint that image on my jaws, so I'm going to take this outside real quick and knock off this really rough mill scale. We'll mount it in the vise. I'll turn this vise 90 degrees because cutting long ways is faster. Take a lot longer to cut across this than it would lengthwise. And we'll cut it. It'll take some, we'll have to take quite a bit of metal off this, but if we end up with something around 3/4 of an inch, I'll be happy with that. So, turn this vise 90 degrees. Just line up the numbers. Good enough for this job. Alright, so I got to find a place to zero on this, and this being extremely wedge shaped, I just took my surface gauge and found my high spot, and now I'm just comparing it to the low, and it looks like that I've got a good 1/8 of an inch difference as far as thickness on this part. So what I'm going to do is come over here. I'm just going to zero on my low spot and try to clean this up in one pass as far as the roughing pass. And then I'll come back with a finishing pass, just standard operating procedure. So will this cutter hold up? I don't know, but we're going to try it. You know, worst case scenario, we have to regrind it, but I don't want to spend all day on this, so I'm going to just go as far as feeding across. I'm not going to be too aggressive. I'm going to probably go 20 thousandths per stroke, and maybe about 60 on our surface feet per minute. So let's get this thing fired up and start cutting. slow. I'm going to burn this thing up. Surface feet per minute, so it's slow for mild steel, and 20 thousandths per stroke. One pass, that's pretty good. Got a little that didn't clean up out here, but I'm fine with that. This is just a plate for mounting our grinder. So not a heavy cut really for this machine at all, but those are some pretty good chips. Probably could have run a little faster, but I don't want to burn this cutter up cutting through that mill scale. Alright, let's flip this thing and do the other side. Well, before we flip it, let's, seeing as this is flat in the shaper, let's just go ahead and finish this side. And I'm going to use a cutter that was not ground by me, it was ground by the gentleman that owned the toolbox that I bought. And should be pretty interesting. It's a neat cutter. I've used it once and it performed pretty good. I dressed the edge up on it. Now it's got a chip roller, or you could call it a chip breaker in it. Get you a little closer in here. It's a little weak as far as the edge on it, I think. But it should curl a chip pretty good, so we'll see. Let's get it in this shaper and see what it looks like. This tool happens to be a right to left, so we're going to reverse our clapper. We're going to use a T4S 1/2 inch tool holder. Tilt it a little bit. Tighten our tool. This will be a finishing, so we're just going to go 10 thousandths per stroke. Zero this thing. this little rough edge. Probably won't all the way. Use a little oil on this one. Just because we can. Dial in 10. There we go. This thing just curls them up. That little relief that's ground in there actually works pretty good. And the finish is decent. Shaper's not quite as bad about throwing chips, I don't guess, as a milling machine and a fly cutter, but it still makes a huge mess. I got both sides of this plate done. Now I'm just going to work the edges, and I'm going to call this done. I mean, we're not trying to reach any specific dimensions, it just has to be a plate to mount a grinder to. Me and the wife and kids earlier today, we went to the state capitol to walk around and, you know, just get out of the house a bit. And it's a beautiful place. There wasn't very many people there, so we had a good time. I'll throw in a couple shots of that. Hey guys, this is the capital city of Frankfurt, the city I live in, and this is the actual capital. Me and my wife and kids are out here walking around today just for fun, and I figured I'd get you a shot of it. So, pretty nice building. We'll get a couple more shots. Big clock. Real big. Well, I got my two sides parallel. Now all that's left is to work around the outside edges. And I just put it in the vise. Used my surface that I had up against my fixed jaw and trued it with my machinist square against the ways of the vise. Now I'm just going to use my standard rough and cutter. I really don't care about these surfaces that much. And the same one that I used to rough the first face. And clean up these edges, then I'll come in with a radius tool and I'll radius these edges and it should look pretty neat. I left this really thick simply because I don't want it to warp when I weld it to the shaft, the vertical staff or whatever you want to call it, of the grinder stand. And I don't think you can build a grinder stand too heavy. I mean, you know, keeps them from shimmying around and stuff. That's why you make a grinder that runs so smooth you can stand a quarter on it. 100. 100. Man, that's nice. Look at that finish. Pretty good. Now let's radius these two sides. that's turned out pretty nice. Our radius matches all the way around and on both sides. This was a pre-ground tool. I did not grind this. It was in a box of stuff I'd bought with a shaper, to be honest. And if I can ever grind like that, I'll be happy, because that is a really nice job. This one had been, they knocked the face off of it. It had gotten dull, I assume, and I come in and touched it up again to get a good edge on it. And I just set my depth and then fed over a specific amount each time. That way it matches all the way around. So I'll just clean this up a little bit. Run these edges into the top just with a hand file and clean it up. And I think that will be a nice grinder mounting plate. Let's look at some viewer mail. Alright, now I suggest if you have a bad heart or health problems, you skip this part, because I don't know how to show this stuff without coming off as bragging. But I'm not. My buddy Jim Lichty sent me a couple items that are simply amazing, if you ask me. Now, he had sent me some items in the past. He sent me a PDF of a KO Lee cutter grinder manual, which I refer to all the time and is really nice and in-depth, that I think will really help when I get to using this cutter grinder. And I've showed this item in the past. It is a multiple articulating point grinding vise used primarily for grinding high-speed steel and stuff, for the lathe or the shaper. And it has multiple articulating points, and will really be handy, and I can't wait to use it on the cutter grinder. But Jim really, went above that, and he sent me a couple items that I was really surprised to get, and I want to bring you in and show you what he sent. Alright, now here are the two items that Jim sent me. And one is a Kalamazoo 5C indexing collet head. It's a 90-degree, it's a fixed, of course, 90-degree head. He sent the lock ring and everything. And this little thing is super nice. I mean, it looks like it's barely been used, and I really appreciate that. You could use this on the cutter grinder. You could use it on the milling machine. I mean, you could use it on a surface grinder, about anything. And he made it to where it'll take these little indexing rings. Now, Jim went through the trouble and made all of these indexing rings, all with different tooth counts, to fit this and this. Now, he sent this also. Now, I already had the finger attachment. I already had the 5C drawbar and the 5C collet nose. He sent this body. He even went through all the trouble to paint it to match my grinder. Now, how nice is that? This thing has two articulating points. It articulates down here at the base, and it also pivots up here. Now, this will be super nice for grinding cutters and stuff on the cutter grinder. How cool is that? I mean, these are shop made. I mean, how long would it take you to make these? So an amazing gift. Jim is a super nice guy. I've heard his name before in the YouTube community, and he's no stranger to helping folks out. And man, what do you say to a gift like this other than, thank you, Jim. I really appreciate it, and I hope that that comes off as sincere, because it is. Well, I think now all that's left to do is to assemble this thing. I cleaned it up a little bit, just the outside edges. I'll probably come in here and paint these inside. I'll leave these bright aluminum, paint these insides probably black, just for a little accent. And all I need to do is drill and mount my feet. Nothing crazy accurate about that. We're just rough mounting these things, because after all, it's a grinder stand. So let's drill these holes and weld this shaft on. Definitely too fast. While we're at the drill press, we might as well drill our mounting plate. There's no reason to try to mount this thing on the stand and then try to hand drill it. That'd be counterproductive, I think. I already know my foot layout anyway, so drill it and then I'll tap it 3/8/16. This is just a pilot drill. Alright, 2 more, and I'll be done with this. What, Chloe? You don't like the color? I'm sorry. Here's a quick shot of me at work. I'm improvising. I'm on a wooden table, so I'm using this cant twist clamp to hold my work. Out where I'm working, I don't have a good welding bench, so I'm improvising. I'm welding a sanitary fitting to a 1/4-inch compression, and the clamp is transferring my ground and holding my work together. Just sometimes in those remote areas where you have to work and do whatever works, and this got me by, and actually turned out pretty good. But here's a shot of the fitting. All right, let's mock this thing up. Now I've got my feet on here, and just temporary. All this is just temporary right now. I've got some bolts ordered. I just got 1 in each right now, and this is just our cosmetic cover here. We made a little transition cover from this cover, or from this to the shaft. I'll show you a little closer in just a second. Slide our shaft down. And all we like is welding our shaft to our stand, and then welding our cover to this cover, and then tacking it to the shaft. That will hold it all together. I still need to weld the top on, but I want this grinder to be, the grinding table to be at the proper working height for me. So I think I'm going to wait to weld the top on until I get the grinder finished. That way I get it at the right height, because it's a little tall right now. Set this up on here. I just put a little spray paint on the top. Still got to weld it to the shaft so I didn't paint the bottom. Let me bring you in a little closer and get you a better look. All right, there's there's the top and the bottom. I think it's gonna be pretty neat. Where this is a corkscrew, I had to offset this hole. I just used a piece of cardboard and mocked it up. It wasn't nothing special. Did it with a piece of cardboard and then transferred it to a little piece of stainless so you didn't miss anything. Kind of cleaned this up a little bit. I still need to, it was a rough casting, so it's really rough, and I didn't do it much favors by hitting it with a grinding wheel or with a flap disc. So I'll probably spend a little more time, cleaning this up and then clear coat it, painted the inside like I showed you. So let's go out and do our welding. At one time, I'm sure this was an extremely expensive piece, but now it's just scrap, really. We'll turn it into something useful. Turn the welder on, gas on, 140 amps. I'm not gonna cook this thing too hard to this stand. I don't think it's necessary. I just want it to hold, because it's sitting in a socket. It's just going to have downward force on it. If I ever want to take it back off for any reason, I won't regret not baking it. But we're going to weld it pretty good. Alright, that ain't gonna fall off. Let's put our ring on. I'm just gonna center it all up by eye. It's a grounder stand. Yeah. It's hitting my rack up there, making it's not as easy as it should be. So just for looks, really. Turn that welder down a bit. And a little smaller filler. Just gonna tack this guy good too. Be awesome. Well, I brought it outside so we could get a little better look at it. It's not cleaned up yet, but I think it'll look real good once it is. It's a lot of things. Part pump, part washing machine, part pipe fitting, part railroad piece. That was old plate from the bottom of a railroad bed. So it's a Frankenstand, that's for sure, but pretty neat. Probably weighs about 50 pounds. That piece of shafting's pretty heavy, so. And the 3 feet, I like that. I mean, it'll set stable pretty much no matter where you put it. Still got to work on, getting it to the proper working height, but that's no big deal at all. So, guys, I really appreciate you watching. If you haven't, make sure to subscribe to the channel by clicking on my little guy up here and hit the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoy my videos, and I'll see you next time.